Père, a Marvel fanfiction written by Satans_Dolly_boy666 on AO3. It took Tony 3 days to find the kid. Of course, during those 3 days, Tony didn't rest for a single minute. Without taking a bath, without eating, without sleeping, the billionaire did not stop looking for the boy, for his son. In a dirty and stinking alley, the 6-year-old was paler than ever. The second step was to give him medical attention. He was severely malnourished, with a lot of infected injuries and a concerning high fever. As he was waking up, the child slowly unstuck his lids, let his big caramel eyes show. "Mr. Stark?" he said, nearly whispering. He was still too weak. Tony was ready for all kinds of things and situations, but never to become a father. Once the child began to improve, he also started to be the same as before. Talkative, cheerful, a brat fully lit. "Mr. Stark, will I go back to the place where all the bad adults are? I don't want to go there. I'd rather go back to the streets," he'd once said. His heart shrank at the thought of returning the child to the cold and dangerous streets of New York. This wasn't easy for Tony. Yes, it was lovely to say, "I'm going to save this child and take care of him for the rest of my life," but the billionaire had never had a father figure himself. By not having one, he knows from his own experience the importance and impact parents have on children. He chooses to drink a whole bottle of whiskey instead of thinking about what he will do with Peter. It's been several weeks now, and he can't extend the situation any further. It's time to declare whether to adopt Peter, his biological son, or get rid of him, abandon his own flesh and blood. Honestly, Tony has nothing to lose by abandoning the brat. He returns him to the system, then his life of luxury, money and alcohol will continue. But then he remembers the times he was little and wished to play with his father, or at least be pampered by him. He secretly admired Howard Stark, and Tony did his best to make him proud and prove he was worthy of something. He tried for years, until he reached adolescence and understood his father was a complete asshole lacking emotional responsibility. Tony tried to convince himself that it wasn't his duty to take care of Peter, yet here he is, his own flesh and blood. But he still had no connection with the kid, and it wasn't his fault that Mary kept him hidden since the beginning. Peter proved in such a short period of time to be a good kid. He's careful, smart, kind, and polite. Tony expected a spoiled, noisy, or at least annoying child, but he found the opposite. All just the opposite of him. "Mr. Stark, do you remember the promise you made me?" said little Pete, while he was in the kitchen eating a jelly and peanut butter sandwich. When Tony didn't answer, the boy kept talking. "You said you'd show me the Iron Man suit." And he did. Peter seemed to jump out of excitement at any moment. His eyes sparkled with joy and he couldn't stop smiling. Tony liked what he saw. It was a normal reaction that he sees in his fans all the time, but the internal voice reminded him he isn't your fan, he's your son. Tony is his temporary guardian and must decide what to do with Peter. On the phone, he seems to have a brief conversation with a social worker, and by the time the call is over, Rhodey is staring at him. "What are you looking at?" Tony asks, while taking a big sip of coffee out of his mug. The other man said, "I'm looking at you." Rhodey is a great friend, one of the few he really trusts, and there he is, in both good and bad times. And that's a lot to say, since the billionaire has been in more bad than good situations. "Tony, you don't have to do this alone. You know I'm here for you, right?" Tony's no good at showing feelings, so he opts to evade it by making ironic comments. "Aw, you're such a honey bear." His friend ends by saying, "Peter's a good kid. Think what is best for his future, Tony. You have a bad impression of yourself, but you once sold war weapons and now you're a war hero. You make the changes here." Tony would like to have had the same optimism as Rhodey. The boy has similar aspects to Tony. Both are genius, both have Bambi eyes, and both suffer nightmares on a regular basis. The first time Tony witnesses the nightmare of Peter, he almost felt like he was going to have a panic attack. The second time, the child couldn't help but hold on to the adult, not letting him go until he fell asleep. The billionaire decided that his child should go into therapy. Fairly funny, he almost decided to join therapy too, but didn't. On Peter's birthday, the boy is awfully quiet. He smiles, but it looks almost robotic and poorly formed. Pepper notices and tried to walk up to cheer him up, and for a moment Peter almost seemed the same. Almost. When she excuses herself to go pick up something, Tony walks up to the child to find out what's happening with him. "Hey kid, does anything hurt? You didn't eat much today." Peter, with his saggy eyes, stares up at the adult with his tiny hands. He touches his chest and replies, "It hurts here." The concern doesn't take long to reach Tony when he hears that, of course, and just thinking that the child has a heart condition makes him blue. Peter, seeing that the billionaire seemed concerned, clarifies, "My heart hurts, but not in the way you think it does." The child is clearly on the verge of tears, and this time he's staring at the floor. Peter tells him this is the first time in ages he's had his own birthday cake, or the first time he's received gifts. The child claims that it's far too good to be true and knows that any time he will be alone again. Tony always thought he was an insensitive, hollow-hearted, cold person, but upon seeing his son in distress and all negative, it showed him that although he has an arc reactor at the center of his chest, it's warmer than ever before. Tony's trying to comfort him. It's strange, to be a father, to figure out himself so many times in his childhood with the same lonely, sad child Peter is now. "I'm not going to leave you," the billionaire says to the boy, and Peter seems to be paying attention to his words. Then, is it okay if I call you Dad?" Tony does freeze for a few seconds, but he doesn't hesitate to hug his boy, tightly. Yeah, you can call me whatever you want. No matter what, you're a part of my life now." Peter keeps on hugging Tony, like a koala on a tree. A shy, warm smile lights up his face. "The cake was yummy, and I enjoyed the presents. It's my first birthday. I've enjoyed it so much." The adult remembers his own unhappy birthdays, and is grateful that Peter no longer has to experience the same situation again. "And thanks for everything, Dad." Tony likes what he hears, so he decides he'll take the risk of being a father figure. It's not the first challenge he has anyway.